Alright, let's rewind the clock a bit, back to a time when woolly mammoths roamed the land. Picture this: vast, untamed landscapes covered in snow with herds of these majestic creatures lumbering across the terrain. It was a world untouched by modern civilization where survival was the name of the game. Back then, Britain wasn't even an island yet. It was connected to mainland Europe by land bridges, allowing animals and early humans to migrate freely. Imagine walking from France to England without needing a ferry. We're talking way back, folks, the Stone Age, a time when humans were just starting to figure out how to use tools made of stone. These tools were their lifeline, used for hunting, building, and even creating art. Life was simple, but every day was a challenge. And then, of course, we have Stonehenge. Those mysterious Stonehenge dudes decided to arrange some massive rocks in a circle. But how did they do it? And why? Was it a calendar, a temple, a prehistoric party venue? The mystery still baffles us today. Whatever their reasons, Stonehenge has stood the test of time. Today it's one of the most iconic landmarks in the world, drawing millions of visitors who marvel at its ancient grandeur. Fast forward a few millennia, and you've got Celtic tribes chilling in Britain. These folks were known for their vibrant culture, intricate art, and of course painting themselves blue. It might sound odd, but it was their way of showing strength and unity. The ancient Britons had their own set of gods, languages, and traditions. They lived in close-knit communities, celebrating their beliefs through rituals and ceremonies. Their connection to nature was profound and their way of life was deeply spiritual. But let's not romanticize it too much. Life was tough. Harsh weather, limited resources, and constant threats from predators and rival tribes made survival a daily struggle. Then came the Iron Age, a game-changer in human history. With the discovery of iron, people could create stronger tools and weapons, revolutionizing agriculture, warfare, and daily life. This period brought about some fancy new tools and weapons, making life a bit easier, or at least more efficient. It was a time of innovation and progress. Gradually, ancient Britain began to evolve. Villages grew, trade expanded, and societies became more organized. It was the dawn of a new era, setting the stage for even greater changes to come. But little did they know, things were about to get a whole lot more interesting. Enter the Romans, toga-wearing tourists from the south, bringing with them roads, baths, and a whole new way of life. Ancient Britain would never be the same again. Speaking of toga-wearing tourists, let's talk about the Romans. In 55 BC, Julius Caesar popped over for a quick visit, saw Britain, and decided, yeah, we could conquer that, and conquer they did, turning a good chunk of Britain into a Roman province. The Romans brought their love of baths, straight roads, and underfloor heating. They even introduced the concept of a good takeaway, though their version probably involved more grapes and garum sauce than your average curry night. But the Romans couldn't stay forever. By the 5th century AD, they'd packed up their togas and headed back to Rome, leaving Britain to fend for itself. And who should show up but those bearded party animals, the Vikings? These Norse raiders weren't exactly known for their politeness. They pillaged, they plundered, and they generally made a nuisance of themselves. The Vikings weren't the only ones with their eyes on Britain. While they were busy raiding and pillaging, another group was quietly plotting their own takeover. The Normans, descendants of Vikings themselves, had settled in northern France and were biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In 1066, a Norman duke named William, who, let's be honest, was a bit of a drama queen, decided he deserved the English throne. He claimed that King Edward had promised it to him, but when Harold Godwinson took the crown instead, William was not about to let that slide. Cue the Norman conquest, a messy affair culminating in the Battle of Hastings. This wasn't just any battle, it was a turning point in English history. The Normans brought their A-game, complete with cavalry, archers, and a whole lot of determination. The Anglo-Saxons, led by King Harold, fought valiantly, but the Normans had the upper hand. Spoiler alert, King Harold met a rather dramatic end with an arrow to the eye. This moment, immortalized in the Bayeux Tapestry, marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule and the beginning of a new era. William, now known as William the Conqueror, because branding, brought his Norman buddies over and basically flipped the script on English society. They built castles, lots of castles, to assert their dominance and protect their new territory. These weren't just homes, they were symbols of power and control. The Normans also introduced the feudal system, a hierarchical structure that reshaped the way land and power were distributed. And if that wasn't enough, they made sure everyone spoke French, très chic. French became the language of the elite, influencing English in ways that are still evident today. From law to literature, the Norman impact was profound. This was a wild time of knights, castles, and the occasional plague. The medieval period was as fascinating as it was chaotic, with power struggles, cultural shifts, and of course, the ever-present threat of disease. But even Norman kings had to answer to someone. Fast forward to 1215, and we meet King John, a ruler so unpopular that he was forced to sign a little document called the Magna Carta. This wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a game changer. The Magna Carta, or Great Charter, limited the king's power and laid the groundwork for constitutional governance. It was a bold move that shifted the balance of power, even if it didn't solve all of England's problems overnight. It also established some basic rights for the people, planting the seeds for future democratic principles. For the average peasant, life didn't change much, but the Magna Carta was a step in the right direction. And let's not forget, it was written in really old-timey English. Despite its archaic language, the Magna Carta remains a symbol of the enduring struggle for justice and equality, proving that even in medieval mayhem, progress was possible. Section 4. Empires, Enlightenment, and Other Eccentricities. A journey through time, where we explore the rise of an empire, the spark of new ideas, and the eccentricities that shaped history. Fast forward a few centuries and, well, Britain's gone global, baby. From the Americas to Asia, the British Empire stretched its influence far and wide, leaving its mark on cultures, economies, and politics. The age of exploration saw brave, or maybe a bit foolhardy depending on how you look at it, British explorers setting sail to discover new lands. Armed with maps, telescopes, and a whole lot of ambition, they ventured into the unknown, driven by dreams of wealth, power, and adventure. Now, they weren't exactly greeted with open arms everywhere they went. In fact, many encounters were fraught with conflict and resistance. But despite the challenges, they managed to establish a rather impressive empire, one that would shape the world for centuries to come. You know, the one they love to call the empire on which the sun never sets. A poetic way of saying their reach was so vast, the sun was always shining on at least one of their territories. Meanwhile, back home, things were changing too. The Industrial Revolution was kicking off, transforming Britain into a hub of innovation and industry. Cities grew, factories sprang up, and life as people knew it began to shift dramatically. And then came the Enlightenment, a period that brought about all these new ideas on reason, science, and individual liberty. It was a time of intellectual awakening, where thinkers and philosophers challenged old beliefs and laid the groundwork for modern society. Think John Locke, who championed the idea of natural rights, or Isaac Newton, whose discoveries in physics and mathematics changed the way we understand the universe. And of course, let's not forget the powdered wigs, because nothing says serious intellectual like a fancy wig. And speaking of intellectuals, let's not forget Shakespeare. Though he predates the Enlightenment, his works continued to influence and inspire during this time. This was also his time, giving us timeless classics like Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. His plays explored the depths of human emotion and the complexities of society, themes that resonated across generations. Sure, his plays can feel like a bit of a slog sometimes, especially when you're deciphering 16th century English, but hey, they're masterpieces for a reason. Or at least that's what your high school English teacher probably told you, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Section 5. Industrial Innovations and Victorian Vibes. By the 18th century, Britain had become a hive of invention and industry. The Industrial Revolution kicked off, fueled by steam engines, factories, and, a whole lot of coal. It was an era of massive change, urbanization, and let's be real, some pretty awful working conditions for a lot of people. Then in 1837, Queen Victoria took the throne, ushering in the Victorian era. This was a time known for its strict morals, elaborate fashion, and yet a good dose of imperialism. Britain was at the height of its power, ruling over a quarter of the world's population. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Poverty, disease, and social inequality still plagued the nation.